Here we are back together again. We're going on with the orally transmitted teachings, and we're on the fourth chapter, which is belief and understanding. And I'm going to read a synopsis of that chapter from the dictionary. Okay, it's on page 38 for anybody that wants to follow, or if you go into www.nichirenlibrary.org, you will be able to find everything I'm going to read there. Okay, so this is belief and understanding from the dictionary, page 38. It goes like this. That's an indoor dog. That's not mine. The fourth chapter of the Lotus Sutra. In this chapter, the fourth great voice hearers, having heard the parable of the three carts and the burning house that Shakyamuni related in the simile and parable third chapter, now rejoice in their understanding of its meaning. Remember, they were all talking about, we got this feeling, okay? Do you remember from last week? Okay. Those great voice hearers, the four great voice hearers, Subhuti and Magdagayana and he'll mention them here in a second. Okay, so remember those from the last chapter because this is leading right out of it, okay? All right. In this chapter, the four great voice hearers have heard the parable of the three carts and the burning house that Shakyamuni related in the simile and parable third chapter. Now rejoice in this fourth chapter in their understanding of its meaning. They understand that Shakyamuni's true intention is to and again, what's significant about these voice hearers? These four great voice hearers here. They're real people. They're real disciples. They're not appearing from someplace else. Okay? So, the four great voice hearers are Maheke Shayapa, Katyayana, Malgayana, and Subhuti, excuse me. To understand that, Shakyamuni's true intention is to reveal the one Buddha vehicle that leads all people to Buddhahood. So they figure out, okay, the reason he's telling us this Lotus Sutra is because it contains the teaching that he's never revealed to us before, right? And he's already qualified. But wait, it's been 40 or more years since I've revealed. We've already gone through the first four chapters. Don't reveal 1, 2, and 3, what they say. Okay. All right. To display their own creation. The parable of the, to display their understanding of the meaning of the parable from the last chapter, they relate a parable of their own creation here in this fourth. This isn't Shakyamuni talking now, telling a story. This is the four great voice hearers, okay? Subhuti, I believe, is the one actually doing the talking. To display their understanding of the meaning of the parable in the simile and parable chapter. They relate a parable of their own creation, the parable of the wealthy man and his poor son. In relating it, the four voice hearers identify the wealthy man in the parable with the Buddha, and the people and the poor son with themselves. Just as the poor son did not recognize his wealthy father and was content with lowly employment, so they did not realize that they were children of the Buddha entitled to attain the same state of Buddhahood. Thus they were satisfied with inferior teachings. The pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, right? The connecting and even the wisdom, okay? He's going to go into all this. Just as the poor son did not recognize his wealthy father and was content with lowly employment, they did not realize that they were the children of the Buddha entitled to attain the same state of Buddhahood, just as we are, okay? Because that's the reason they're telling us this story. Thus, they were satisfied with inferior teachings. Until you've embraced the Lotus Sutra, all you've done is be satisfied with inferior teachings, because they all are. The Buddha, perceiving their limited aspirations, led them gradually through provisional teachings to the one Buddha vehicle. So he led them gradually through, started out with the flower garland, that's a Mahayana. Then he took them through the agamas. Then he took them to the correct and equal. Then he took them to the wisdom. Now he's got him to the perfect teaching, right? He was like the wealthy man who allowed his son to engage in lowly employment, gradually helping him develop confidence and ability, and finally declared him to be his heir, transferring all his wealth to him. After relating the parable of the parable, the four voice hearers state that they have received the greatest treasure of Buddhahood without earnestly seeking it. Okay? Do you understand what they're saying there then? They had no idea what they were going to get in exchange for the efforts that they were being asked to make, just like we don't, until we actually attain Buddhahood in our present form and realize this isn't theoretical as actual, okay? All right, so that's the overview. There's a couple of quick things he's going to talk about, and I'll get into all this when I do the review, and I'll do the review for 4 chapters in a row for sure. So the first 4-chapter review will happen sometime after today, but before the next meeting when we take up chapter 5. I want to go to the 8 sufferings because he's going to mention it, because I was kind of going, 8 sufferings? I know what the 4 sufferings, what's he talking about? Okay, so it's on page 149 of the dictionary. The 8 sufferings, 8 kinds of universal suffering. They are the 4 sufferings that we already know about, that we already talk about. Sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Right. Plus the suffering of having to part from those whom one loves. We all have to go through that at the point of the death of a loved one, right? Right. We have to have faith that we're going to be re-encountering. Yeah. Right, okay? The suffering of being, the suffering of having to meet with those whom one hates. Yeah. Okay, because you do. You've got to karma, discern them, right? The suffering of being unable to obtain what one desires, and the suffering arising from the 5 components that constitute one's body and mind. In other words, mental or physical illness. Okay, those were the 8 sufferings. And then there's one more here. I'm going to read you the 1 chapter in the 2 halves again because he's going to talk about it. And I know we've already read it at least once, if not 3 or 4 times. 1 chapter in 2 halves from page 472 of the dictionary, of Buddhist dictionary. The core of the Lotus Sutra, comprising the latter half of the Emerging from the Earth 15th chapter, the entire lifespan 16th chapter, and the first half of the Distinction and Benefits 17th chapter. This section reveals Shakyamuni Buddha's original attainment of enlightenment. This section reveals Shakyamuni Buddha's original attainment of enlightenment. At the beginning of the Emerging from the Earth chapter, the Bodhisattvas of the earth make their appearance. And Bodhisattva Maitreya, on behalf of the assembly, asks Shakyamuni who they are. The Buddha replies that they are his disciples whom he has been teaching since the time of his enlightenment in this Sahe world, although he alludes to having taught them since the long distant past. Unsatisfied, Bodhisattva Maitreya persists. How could Shakyamuni have, asking the question, how could Shakyamuni have possibly trained so many countless bodhisattva in the mere 40 odd years since his awakening under the Bodhi tree? And he goes on to say, I don't recognize any of them, right? He implores Shakyamuni to explain further for the sake of future generations who may harbor doubt. To comply, the Buddha explains in the next chapter, Lifespan, that he actually attained enlightenment in the unimaginably distant past. He had originally said to them up until now, he only heard that about Goyaku Jintingo in the Expedient Means chapter, right? Sanzen Jintingo in the Expedient Means chapter. Major world system dust particle kalpas. Now he's going to talk about numberless major world system dust particle kalpas. Okay. To comply, the Buddha explains in the next chapter, Lifespan, that he actually attained, and not what he told them in Expedient Means, enlightenment in the unimaginably distant past, what is known as numberless major world system dust particle kalpas in the past. And that since then he has always been in this world teaching the people. The first part of the distinction and benefits chapter explains that the bodhisattvas and others who heard this revelation have all thereby received great benefits that will ensure their enlightenment at some point in time in the future. Tentai and Nichiren interpreted the concept of one chapter and two halves differently. According to Tentai's interpretation, the latter half of the emerging from the earth chapter begins with Shakyamuni's statement that the bodhisattvas of the earth are his disciples that he has been teaching since the long distance past. Hearing this brief statement, Tentai says, Shakyamuni's disciples have understood that his enlightenment occurred in the remote past. In the Lotus Sutra, however, this implication is followed by Bodhisattva Maitreya's second question. How could the Buddha have taught so many bodhisattvas in the short space of a few decades? Based on the sutra's text, Nichiren interprets this question as being asked for the sake of those who will come after Shakyamuni's death, the bodhisattvas of the earth, when they actually make their appearance in the fifth 500-year period and beyond, right? Okay, thus Nichiren does not include Shakyamuni's initial brief allusion in his answer to this question, his statement that he has been teaching the bodhisattvas of the earth since the long distant past. Because never mind. Jogyo is the one that's actually been. He's the leader of the bodhisattvas of the earth, right? Thus, Nichiren does not include Shakyamuni's brief allusion to his answer to this question. The allusion is that those are his disciples that he's been teaching since he's been in the Sahe world. Okay, which according to him now has only been since he was born, right? The Sahe world, he hasn't qualified yet, is also a Buddha land. Do you follow? Yeah. Okay. Thus, Nichiren does not include Shakyamuni's brief allusion to his answer to this question. His statement that he has been teaching the bodhisattvas of the earth since the long distant past in the latter half of the emerging from the earth chapter, or in the one chapter in two halves. Okay, again, emerging from the earth would be Sanzen Jintingo, and now he's alluding to Goyaku Jintingo. In fact, he's clarifying Kuan. In other words, Nichiren defines the one chapter in two halves as beginning with Bodhisattva's second question, because that qualifies the bodhisattvas of the earth appearing in the latter day of the law, propagating Nam-myoho Renge-kyo rather than this Lotus Sutra 28 chapter teaching for Shakyamuni. Do you follow? This difference in the interpretation of Tentai and Nichiren relates to the distinction Nichiren made between the Buddhism of the harvest, which is Shakyamuni's teaching, and the Buddhism of the sowing, which is Nichiren's. Shakyamuni's reference to the remote past in this chapter is intended to resolve the doubt of the assembly. That is, it is a teaching directed towards Shakyamuni's contemporary disciples, and therefore falls into the category of the Buddhism of harvest. Buddhism of the harvest includes what? The teachings meant to enable Shakyamuni's contemporaries to harvest the seeds of Buddhahood planted in their previous lives, which is expedient means, right? In contrast, Bodhisattva Maitreya's second question is asked on behalf of those who will appear after Shakyamuni's death. In reply, Shakyamuni reveals his enlightenment in the remote past in the next chapter, lifespan. According to Nichiren's interpretation, this revelation implies the seed of Buddhahood, or the cause that enables Shakyamuni to attain enlightenment. That is the ultimate truth or law of life and the universe, which is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And he's going to qualify that in this chapter. That's why I'm reading all this to you. He's going to claim, he's going to make that distinction. No, this is an expedient means, what I'm telling you now. All right. Okay. Pardon me. I'm just going to read the whole paragraph, so I'll be done. This difference in the interpretation of Chintai and Nichiren relates to the distinction Nichiren made between the Buddhism of the harvest and the Buddhism of sowing. Shakyamuni's reference to the remote past in this chapter is intended to resolve the doubts of the assembly. That is, it is a teaching directed towards Shakyamuni's contemporary disciples. That means his contemporaries, his existing at that moment in time, and therefore falls into the category of the Buddhism of the harvest. The teachings meant to enable Shakyamuni's contemporaries to harvest the seeds of Buddhahood planted in their previous lives. In contrast, which is Goyaku Jintingo, or Sanzen Jintingo. In contrast, Bodhisattva Maitreya's second question is asked on behalf of those who will appear after Shakyamuni's death, the Bodhisattvas of the earth. In reply, Shakyamuni reveals his enlightenment in the remote past in the next chapter, lifespan. According to Nichiren's interpretation, this revelation implies the seed of Buddhahood, or the cause that enabled Shakyamuni to attain enlightenment. That is the ultimate law of life or truth, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All Buddhas attain enlightenment through Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's what he's going to say in this fourth chapter. This law as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I'm sorry. Nichiren identified this law as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which enables all people to attain Buddhahood. Nichiren's one chapter and two halves refers to the essence of the lifespan chapter, or Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Buddhism of sowing, meant for people in the latter day of the law. In the object of devotion for observing the mind, Nichiren writes, the essential teaching of Shakyamuni's lifetime, and that revealed at the beginning of the latter day, are both pure and perfect, in that they both directly lead to Buddhahood. Shakyamuni's, however, is the Buddhism of harvest, and this is the Buddhism of sowing. The core of his teaching is one chapter and two halves, and the core of mine is the 5 characters of the Daimoku alone. Alone. Okay, so now going to chapter 4, belief and understanding of the orally transmitted teaching. Okay, everybody's with me, right? Okay, maybe I can keep from knocking over the water this week. Chapter 4, belief and understanding, 6 important points. Have you been watching all the videos? Are you kept up with these first 3 that preceded?
1.5 times, yes.
Okay. Have you had time?
Yes.
Okay.
Not much, no.
Okay. I won't give you any more shit, bro. I'm just glad you're here, okay? All right. The key is, are you going to be able to follow along to understand, okay? Because it's very important. If any of us could miss a single, that's why we have them on video, right? I know the audio doesn't do its best, yes, sometimes. Okay. Chapter 4, belief and understanding, 6 important points. Point 1, concerning the belief and understanding chapter. On Words and Phrases, Volume 6 says, so Myolo says, in the Lotus Sutra of the correct law, which is what? Another translation of the Lotus Sutra by a guy named Dharmakshapa or some stuff like that. It's not Kumarajiva's translation. All right? Remember that Daishonin even says that he changed the word belief and understanding. Oh, he's going to say it here. I read that to you. Okay, never mind. Wait. He's going to explain it. In the Lotus Sutra of the correct law, this chapter is entitled Belief and Wish instead of Belief and Understanding. Okay, it's a different title in the other translation. Kumarajiva used a different translation of the word understanding, right? From wish to understanding. Okay, though the meaning is similar, the word wish is less appropriate than understanding. The chapter describes how the 4 disciples, Subhuti, Katyayana, Maheke Shayapa, Mulgayayana, gained an understanding of the teachings. But what justification is there for the for the use of the word wish? So we know from the synopsis that they're all rejoicing to Shakyamuni that we understand what he just said in simile and parable, and now let us tell a parable to see if we understood it, the last one about the burning house, correctly, right? Okay, he says, but the Daishonin is saying, but what justification is there for the use of the word wish. Again, kumera jiva, change the translation slightly. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, so he goes right into what I think says, the 28 chapters that make up the Lotus Sutra bear various titles. Belief and Understanding is the title given to this chapter. The Truth of 3,000 Realms in a Single Moment of Life, too, has its origins in this single word belief or faith. And it is through the single word belief that the Buddhas of the three existences of past, present, and future attain their enlightenment. Does everybody understand what I just said? Right? Why did what I just say? Why did he just say that? The truth of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, too, has its origins in this single word of belief or faith. What is that? What is the truth of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life? We're all Buddhists. Okay, the Buddha nature exists everywhere, right? Okay, and it is through this single word of belief, because without faith, you don't get to go in through the door, right? Even you, Sherry Pucher, were able to only enter because of not because of wisdom, but because of faith alone, right? Okay, okay. So he says, the truth of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, too, has its origins in a single word belief or faith. And it is through this single word belief that the Buddhas of the three existences of past, present, and future attained their enlightenment. They all had to take faith in the correct teaching. They all had to take faith in Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All right? This word belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. You don't have to expiate all the slanderous karma. When you encounter the correct teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, boom, it's all gone. Did you, okay? You're with me. It's not like the other things where you had to overcome your karma. That's why it took lifetimes. Why doesn't this take lifetimes? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, single lifetime in your current form. Why? Because you don't have to overcome that old karma. Buddhahood changes your karma in the past and in the future. Okay? So, keep breathing. This word belief is a sharp sword that cuts off fundamental darkness or ignorance. It cuts it off. It makes it not have to be expiated. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Okay. Or again, the expiation is a process of reduction, not just of forgiveness. But the point is it's no longer something that hinders you from being able to reach the destination of Buddhahood, because it's going to be a difficult journey. It's a long journey. Okay? Therefore, with regard to belief, words and phrases says, this would be Tentai now. He started out with Myolo. Belief says, belief means to be without doubt. It is a sharp sword that cuts away doubt and perplexity. He continues, Tentai. Understanding is another name for wisdom. Belief represents the value or price we attach to a jewel or a treasure, and understanding represents the jewel itself. Okay, so we're the ones, it's our level of faith that makes it what it is. It's not, it cannot be what it actually is without the combination of our 10th world. It's again, those are words. We are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We are the Buddha. The Buddha is a story, okay? We are the Buddha in its present form. Do you understand? Okay. So, belief means to be without doubt. So this is mugi-washin, as we say all the time. This is doubt-free faith is the sharp sword that cuts away doubt and perplexity. Because you can get benefit if you have doubt-free faith. You don't have to chant and chant and chant and chant. You chant and chant and chant and chant, not sure if you're going to get the benefit, not sure if you're going to... Yeah, you could chant and chant and chant and chant. It's two different levels of utilization of the power.
Yes.
How can you be rewarded for misconduct? You can't be. You will never grow from that. Our children has already shown us that. Understanding is a name for wisdom. Belief represents the value or price we attach to a jewel or treasure, and understanding represents the jewel itself. It is through the one-word belief that we are able to purchase the wisdom of the Buddhas of the three existences. that wisdom is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We're not looking at anything beyond Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Belief is the source of wisdom and belongs to the stage of hearing the names and the words of the truth. Right? Because that's what sets us on our path. Hearing the name and the words, and then we have to pursue it, right? Okay, outside of belief, there can be no understanding because there's no action to create the cause. Okay? And outside of understanding, there can be no belief. Okay? It is through this one word belief that the seeds of perfect enlightenment are sown. So, as we encounter it, okay, and we grow, that's what he's talking about right now, all right? Now when Nichiren and his followers believe in and accept Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and now why does he qualify it and accept? Because he's basically saying, now when Nichiren and his followers believe in and practice and propagate, okay, to accept Nam-myoho Renge-kyo means that you're following the teaching of Nichiren, right? It doesn't just mean, I believe in what he says. I think he's really a smart guy, and I think that makes more sense than anything else. If you're not doing the thing, okay, then it's words.
Yes.
All right. Now, when Nichiren and his followers believe in, at the top of page 55, first full paragraph. Now, when Nichiren and his followers believe in and accept Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are gaining possession of a great precious jewel. What are you gaining possession of?
Buddhahood.
Your innate Buddha nature. Okay? In the words of belief and understanding chapter, okay, and the way they express that in this belief and understanding chapter is this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. Okay, do you understand then? Why it's called this cluster of jewels that has come to us unsought. When we start practicing, do we really believe we can attain Buddhahood in our present form? No, we're told we can chant for stuff and we can get it.
Yeah.
That's the hook.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what keeps us going. That's how we determine whether or not our belief is real or whether we should keep believing. All of those are little steps, okay? So he says, you didn't pursue this because you were seeking Buddhahood.
No.
Because you didn't have the life condition to perceive Buddhahood. Okay? All right. So this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. Belief is the seed of wisdom. But failure to believe will lead one to fall into hell because you'll reject the correct teaching. Again, we may say that belief corresponds to the principle of eternal and unchanging truth. Therefore, belief means to experience the knowledge that all dharmas or phenomena are every one of them the Buddha Dharma or law. Okay? From volume 1 of Great Concentration and Insight, and to believe in the single truth or principle of the true aspect of all phenomena. Understanding corresponds to the wisdom that functions in accordance with changing circumstances. That is to say, the immeasurable wisdom that is freely gained and employed. Did you all understand what that just said? Let's go over it slowly. Again, we may say that belief corresponds to the principle of eternal and unchanging truth. So belief corresponds to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? Therefore, belief means to experience the knowledge. Okay? And Nam-myoho Renge-kyo's teaching is that everything is contained within Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's the original state, right? So that would also mean that you would come to the understanding and experience that the knowledge that all dharmas or phenomena are every one of them the Buddha Dharma or law. Okay? That everything is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is what that sentence just said. Okay? Volume 1 from Great Concentration and Insight. Now, Tentai wasn't saying that when he said that in Great Concentration and Insight specifically, because he wasn't talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but he knew about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, because all Buddhists, and Tentai was definitely a Buddha. Okay, all Buddhists, all right? And they may not, again, you know, it's very, very complicated, but it's the same law. It's the same understanding, okay? All right. Volume 1 of Great Concentration Insight. And he continues, and to believe in the single vehicle or principle of the true aspect of phenomena. Okay, and that means to believe in not just the Lotus Sutra or the Lifespan chapter, but it now means to believe in Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? All right. Understanding corresponds to the wisdom that functions in accordance with changing circumstance. That is to say, the immeasurable wisdom that is freely gained and employed. So what is that? Understanding corresponds to the wisdom that functions in accordance with changing circumstances. What is that saying? What's that talking about? That's your 10th world. That's the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo inside of you, living in the 9 worlds. Because those are all continuously changing circumstances, right? And you're continuously able to approach them not through just the limitation of the single 9 world, but the 10th world of each of the 9th of those 9 worlds, right? Okay. So, that is freely gained and employed. Why does it say it's freely gained and employed? Because it's as simple as having faith and chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? Volume 9 of Words and Phrases says, belief means to be without doubt. Understanding means to have a clear perception of the matter, of what Buddhahood is, what is the correct teaching. Volume 6, okay, that of Words and Phrases says, the disciples of intermediate capacity, such as Subhuti and the others, when they heard the Buddha preach the simile and parable chapter, for the first time rid themselves of doubt and perplexity and entered upon the path of insight expounded in the great vehicle. Okay, what's the great vehicle? We know it to be Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but in reality, what's the lesser vehicle? Hinayana. What's the greater vehicle? Mahayana. Okay, so for the first time rid themselves of doubt and perplexity and entered upon the path of insight expounded in the Mahayana teachings, because the Mahayana teachings from the flower garland all the way up, right, are leading you to the Lotus Sutra and the Nirvana, the perfect teaching. Therefore, the step of the process is termed belief. The step of the process is termed belief, okay? They then proceeded to the path of practice as expounded in the great vehicle, the Mahayana. Therefore, this is termed understanding. Volume 6 of On Words and Phrases, commenting on this, says, looking at the matter from the viewpoint of the great vehicle, we may say that the 2 words belief and understanding refer to the 2 paths of insight and practice. And he's going to eventually say here, as the culmination of saying the same thing over and over again, that belief and understanding are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, so just to jump ahead, so you don't get confused. Volume 6 of On the Words and Phrases. So this is Myola, says, commenting on this, says, looking at the matter from the viewpoint of the great vehicle of Mahayana Buddhism, we may say that the 2 words belief and understanding refer to the 2 paths of insight and practice, which is now he's referring to that last stage of insight, concentration and insight. That's what the whole Makashikan was. That's what Tentai Buddhism is. First one rids oneself of doubt, okay, because this says it all. All right. We may say that the 2 words belief and understanding refer to the 2 paths of insight and practice. First one rids oneself of doubt, and therefore this is called belief, okay? Then one proceeds to embark on the path of practice, and this is called understanding, okay? So first one rids oneself of doubt. How do you do that? First one rids oneself of doubt. Isn't that what you did when you started chanting? You believed, but it was a belief that was based on somebody else saying something. You hadn't seen anything substantiated. Okay? All right. So we may say the two words belief and understanding refer to the two paths. Okay, do you get it now?
Yeah.
All right. Without that initial belief, you can never understand.
Right.
Okay? And without that understanding ever happening, you can never really believe,
Right.
as it will be necessary to
Right.
withstand the
Got-
difficult journey to Buddhahood.
Gotta
Do you-
study.
It makes it all sense now, right? Okay.
totally.
I'll read this paragraph over again. I'm glad you got. Did you get it? Everybody got it. Okay, I'm going to read it again anyhow. Volume 6 of On Words and Phrases. Myolo, commenting on this, says, looking at the matter from the viewpoint of Mahayana, we may say that the two words belief and understanding refer to the two paths of concentration and insight. Okay, of insight and practice. That's what that Makashikan is the practice of insight. To concentrate, utilizing concentration to achieve it. First one rids oneself of doubt. You get past the question of whether or not this is real. You've experienced something that makes you want to continue, at least to check it out, right? Okay, first one rids oneself of doubt, and therefore this is called belief, because now when you've rid yourself of doubt, okay, I can see that this works. You've now rid yourself of doubt. Now you're not wondering if it works. You're sure that there should be a result. Then one proceeds to embark on the path of practice. Okay, and this is called understanding, because what's the difference now? What do you do as you start practicing versus continuing practicing?
Faith is different.
Faith, practice, and study, right. You begin to tell other people. You begin trying to understand Buddhism. You begin understanding the teaching itself, right?
Yes.
It all started with the single Nam-myoho Renge-kyo
Yes.
that actually delivered what you were asking for it to when you said it, because that's what you had been promised it could do.
Yeah.
Never thinking about the fact that it would lead you to Buddhahood. In honesty.
Yeah.
Okay, even though they said that's where it's going to go. All right? It's not possible for you to think about it. Just like, you don't. You're limited in your capacity. You couldn't
Yeah.
perceive of what Buddhahood being. All right? Okay. Then the path of practice. This is called understanding. So again, if we only believe but we don't practice, we don't really understand.
Yes.
Okay? Our practice is what expresses that we do understand, that this just isn't happy candy talk in our freaking head like 90% of the rest of the shit going on in the world.
Yes.
Okay? We are Buddhas.
Yes.
We're living the life of a Buddha. We're developing our life for the sake of validating that we're Buddhas.
Yes.
There will be no doubt about our Buddhahood by the time we leave this Sahe world.
Definitely.
That was why we came.
Definitely.
All right? The term belief applies to both paths. But the term understanding applies only to the path of practice, which we both all just agree we understand, right?
Yes.
But the term understanding applies only to the path of action. Therefore, the path of action is termed understanding. The path of practice is termed understanding. Okay? You only get there by faith alone? Aha! But faith includes practice. So don't think you can just believe in this
No
and
action.
not do gongyo, not chant, not be consistent, not know what the hell the teaching is, and not do shakabuku or chant for other people. You got to do all of it.
Yes.
Okay? Continuing then on point 2. I'm sorry it took so long to get through point 1. Point 2, page 56, regarding the passage, suppose there was a man still young in years who abandoned his father, ran away, and lived for a long time in another land. Okay, now this is the parable that the 4 great bodhisattvas, Subhuti and, the Heike Shayapa and what they're telling us. Words and phrases, Tiantai, volume 6 says, in the passage, abandoned his father ran away. Abandon means to withdraw from the great vehicle. Okay, so you're looking at a parable. That's a story that's supposed to be teaching you a deeper lesson, right? Okay, so abandon means to withdraw from the great vehicle. And again, what are we talking about with the great vehicle? Ultimately, it's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but we're really talking about the thing that leads to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is Mahayana Buddhism. Okay? All right. So, because that's what many of the people of the Hinayana of Agamas did. They couldn't understand the flower garland. He had to drop down to the agamus. Okay, that's what he's talking about. In the passage, abandoned his father, ran away. Abandon means to withdraw from the great vehicle. Run means to shroud oneself in darkness or ignorance. And run away, to turn toward the realm of birth and death. To turn toward the realm of the six continuous, endless loop karma, right? You never escape the sufferings of birth and death. You never get Buddhahood as part of your existence, okay? And those six paths. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, Nichiren says on point 2, the word father can be taken in three ways. It may stand for the Lotus Sutra, looking at the parable, okay? May stand for the Lotus Sutra, or for Shakyamuni, or for Nichiren, because the age has changed, and we're now in the latter day, and this is a different time, okay? So the Lotus Sutra is the father of all living beings, okay? But he just told us in simile and parable, are the Lotus Sutra, right? In chapter 3. By turning one's back on the Lotus Sutra, one becomes an ordinary mortal who is subject to the round of transmigration. You only get through the six paths. You can never get into the four higher worlds that ultimately lead to Buddhahood, which is eternal. You don't ever have to worry about anything once you hit enlightenment. Buddhahood always comes back. Now, what's he saying here? He's saying you can lose your ability to have that connection to the upper four worlds if you turn your back on, that's called slander, the correct teaching. I'll read it again. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word father can be taken in three ways. It may stand for the Lotus Sutra, which you probably can handle, for Shakyamuni Buddha, which you can probably handle, but hey, guess what? Also for me, because I'm the one that brought out Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The Lotus Sutra is the father of all living beings. All living beings. Yes. By turning one's back on the Lotus Sutra, which we already qualified is the same thing as lots of other people, of a teaching. Okay. By turning one's back on the Lotus Sutra, one becomes an ordinary mortal who is subject to the round of transmigration. You've just eliminated your automatic connection to the four higher worlds, karmically. Shakyamuni Buddha is the father of all living beings. He also said that Shakyamuni, the Lotus Sutra, in the last chapter, he said the Lotus Sutra is Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni is all living beings. All living beings are Shakyamuni. By turning one's back on this Buddha, one keeps revolving on and on through the various paths of existence. Again, none of us, by practicing the teachings and being disciples of Nichiren, have turned our backs on Shakyamuni in any way. As a matter of fact, we are in following Nichiren's teaching, following Shakyamuni's teaching, because he already qualified in the Great Collection Sutra that the Lotus Sutra would not be actually current after the 5th 500-year period and beyond, and the Great Pure Law would be introduced. So we've actually gone from the Lotus Sutra as it was left by Shakyamuni, just as Shakyamuni had intended it. Because Shakyamuni knew Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, as you're going to find out by the time I get through this chapter. Okay? All right, now, Shakyamuni Buddha, who is the father of all living beings, by turning one's back on this Buddha, one keeps revolving on and on through the various paths of existence. Now, Nichiren is the father of all living beings in the country of Japan. The great teacher Chang'an, in his commentary on the Nirvana Sutra, says, one who rids the offender of evil is acting as his parent. And the Daishonin has been doing shakabuku, ridding evil from the provisional teachings. All right? To the words, to withdraw from the great vehicle in the passage from words and phrases Chintai above. The great vehicle refers to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I knew I'd say that eventually. Darkness refers to doubt, perplexity, and slander of the law. To shroud oneself in such darkness is to be like the evil monks Honen, Kobo, Jikaku, Chisho, Doryo, or Ryokan, and the others who deliberately shroud or conceal the fact that they are guilty of slandering the law. So again, In the words to withdraw, the great vehicle in the passage from words and phrases, tentai, the great vehicle refers, when you're talking about withdraw, he's talking turning your back on Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Then they go into darkness. He's saying darkness refers to doubt, perplexity, and slander of the law. To shroud oneself in such darkness is to be like these evil monks. We don't do any of that, okay? But for those people that do, they probably shouldn't be. Point 3, regarding the passage, as he grew older, he found himself increasingly poor and in want. Words and Phrases, volume 6 says, at the bottom of page 56, when one cannot find the all-important means to escape from the realm of birth and death, one is in poverty. When one doesn't know how to get to the Buddha, to the 4 higher worlds, to be able to access the 10th, you're in poverty because you don't have any ability to get anything that sticks with you. And because one is consumed by the fires of the 8 sufferings, one is in want. We all know what that is now, right? 4 sufferings plus having to leave somebody you love, talk to somebody you don't like, a couple other things. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the all-important means to escape from the realm of birth and death is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We all know that. And the means that leads one to escape is the mind of faith, because without the mind of faith, you're not really going to get there. You can't sustain. Now, the reason that Nichiren and his followers are able to avoid and be free from poverty and want is that they accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra. And so now I'm going to say this. Now, the reason that Nichiren and his followers are able to avoid and be free from poverty and want is that they accept and hold the practice of the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law and are disciples of Nichiren. If you don't pull all that up, you don't have that guarantee. All right? Again, we may say that when one encounters the wonderful law, one awakens to the fact that the fires of the 8 sufferings that attend earthly desires are the wisdom fire of the Buddha of limitless joy. Because in your pursuit of getting all those earthly desires, you awaken your Buddha nature because you've tried to get those earthly desires through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, right? Right. Point 4, in the words, his heart filled with regret, longing, and in the passage, the father thought constantly of his son, but though he had been parted from him for over 50 years, he had never told anyone else about the matter. He merely pondered to himself, his heart filled with regret and longing. This is the middle of page 57 from the sutra. Continuing from the OTT. Words and Phrases, Tentai, volume 6 says, regret refers to the father. Longing, kon, which may also mean blame, refers to the son. On the Words and Phrases, Myolo, volume 6 says, the father felt regret for his failure to instruct his son properly and also reproached his son for abandoning him. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, all the various living beings in the country of Japan are comparable to the son. And Nichiren is comparable to the father. Because they failed to have faith in the Lotus Sutra, but what he's really specifically saying, because they failed to have faith in the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, which means chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the living beings fall into the great citadel of hell, of the hell of incessant suffering. But instead of blaming themselves, on the contrary, they look upon Nichiren with reproach. Okay, this shouldn't happen if what you said was real. Okay, doesn't matter that I didn't do what you said I had to do. For his part, Nichiren has never spared his voice in urging them not to cast aside the Lotus Sutra, and so on Eagle Peak he must have his feelings of regret for their dwelling in hell. And so what Nichiren is saying is, no matter how much they might want to blame me, I have never done anything but pray for their well-being. Okay, and because of that, when I get to Eagle Peak, I'm gonna have regret that I wasn't ever able to save them because they committed so much slander. I can't pull them out. They got to pull out themselves, like we all do. Volume 6 of Words and Phrases says, the words his heart filled with regret and longing meant that the father regrets that in the past he failed to teach and admonish his son with sufficient diligence or to instruct him properly, so that as a result the son ran away. And as he reproaches his son for forgetting the obligations he owes his parents and spurning his father and becoming intimate with others. Do you get what he's just saying there? Okay, volume 6 of Words and Phrases says, that would be Tentai again, the words, his heart filled with regret and longing mean that the father regrets that in the past he failed to teach. Okay, so do you understand what he's saying? Why do you regret this? He says in the past. You could refer to it as a single lifetime, but is a father and a son relationship ever just by chance? No. So what he's saying, we can look at everybody that we have in our sphere of influence as people that we've known before that we were not able to lead to enlightenment. We are not able to get them to practice correctly and chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and to be endowed with the 10th world naturally in this lifetime. Okay? So, his heart filled with regret and longing means that the father regrets that in the past he failed to reach and teach and admonish his son with sufficient diligence or to instruct him properly, so that this time around he wants to make sure that he nails it. Okay? He cares about making this cycle stop. All right? So that as a result the son ran away, and he reproaches his son for forgetting the obligation he owes his parents and spurning his father and becoming intimate with others. So he gives him a hard time. When he comes back, he's just employed. He's just an employee, right? He doesn't say, oh, my son, I've been waiting for you to return. Okay? That's a different story. Okay? This one, he never tells the son that he's his dad. And he's never told anybody that he had a son that ran away. Okay? The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, got to go to point 5. Point 5 on the words, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. It's probably the most important passage from the chapter. In the passage, we today have heard the Buddha's teaching, voice teaching, and we dance for joy, having gained what we had never had before. The Buddha declares that the voice hearers will be able to attain Buddhahood. This cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. In other words, the voice hearers were never expecting to be able to attain Buddhahood. They were never expecting. What have the voice hearers been being told all the time they've been practicing up to this time? That they're scorched seeds, right? They're voice hearers and cause awakened ones cannot attain enlightenment, according to everything Shakyamuni's been telling them for all this time up to the Lotus Sutra. Right? Okay, that's one of the things that makes the Lotus Sutra like 40 years you've been telling us these guys are screwed. Now you're going to say they get to be Buddhists too? Okay, so that's what he's talking about. He's saying, point 5, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels has come to us unsought. In the passage, we today have heard the Buddha's voice teaching, and we dance for joy, having gained what we never had before. The Buddha declares that voice hearers will be able to attain Buddhahood. This cluster of blessings has come to us unsought. We were not seeking Buddhahood. We were just seeking advanced arhat. Okay? The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word unsurpassed has various different levels of meaning. From the point of view of the non-Buddhist doctrines, the Tripitaka teaching of Buddhism is unsurpassed. What's Tripitaka? Hinayana. Okay? Whereas the non-Buddhist doctrines have that which surpasses them. Okay? So he says there are some things in the non-Buddhist doctrines that surpass Hinayana. That's why we don't do Hinayana. We do Mahayana. Okay? Hinayana is not going to get you there. All right, so that's what he's just saying. So he's saying, as far as, from the point of view of non-Buddhist doctrines, the Tripitaka teaching of Buddha is unsurpassed, whereas the non-Buddhist doctrines have that which surpasses them. Again, the Tripitaka teaching has that which it surpasses, while the connecting teaching is in comparison unsurpassed. The connecting teaching, in turn, is that which surpasses it, while the specific teaching is unsurpassed. Do you understand what it's saying each time? Each time something that's more profound of clarity is added, it disqualifies what was said previously because it was an expedient means. Okay? Do you understand what they're doing through here? Okay, let me say it again. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word unsurpassed has various different levels or meanings. Okay, why? Because it's all relative to what you know the next thing is. This might be unsurpassed for what you have up until this point. But once this happens, this is surpassed and this is unsurpassed.
Yes.
Okay? And the next step, this becomes surpassed and this becomes unsurpassed. That's how we get to Nam Myoho Renge Kyo from all those lesser teachings. Do you understand? And understandings. Okay, so again, let me go. Here we go. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word unsurpassed has various different levels of meaning. From the point of view of non-Buddhist doctrines, the Tripitaka teaching of Buddhism is unsurpassed, whereas the non-Buddhist doctrines have that which surpasses them. Again, the Tripitaka teachings that has that which surpasses it, while the connecting teaching is in comparison is unsurpassed. In comparison unsurpassed. The connecting teaching, in turn, has that which surpasses it, while the specific teaching is unsurpassed. The specific teaching has that which surpasses it, while the perfect teaching is unsurpassed. So it's qualified, Tripitaka, connecting, specific, and perfect, period. In that order. Who put it in that order? Shakyamuni? No. Who? Tentai. Tentai. Thanks to Nager. I'll think of it in a minute. Thanks to no, I keep mispronouncing it. So now that I've tried to prefer it, Kumera Jiva. Pardon me, not Kumara Jiva. Kumera Jiva. Pardon me. All right. Again, the perfect teaching of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra has that which surpasses it. Okay? Again, the perfect teaching of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra, Tripitaka, connecting and whatever, all right? Before the Lotus Sutra has that which surpasses it, while the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra is unsurpassed. Again, the perfect teaching of the theoretical section of the Lotus Sutra, the first 14 chapters, has that which surpasses it, which is what? The second 14 chapters, which contain the essential teaching of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, hidden in the depths of the 16th chapter, right? Okay, so again, the perfect teaching of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra, because remember we've talked about the perfect teaching is scattered around in everything that preceded the perfect teaching of the Lotus and the Nirvana, all right? But you have to know which parts are, because they have to be clarified as such by the Buddhas of the latter day, okay? Again, the perfect teaching of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra has that which surpasses it, while the perfect teaching of the Lotus Sutra is unsurpassed. And you know where this is going. Again, the perfect teaching of the theoretical section of the Lotus Sutra has that which surpasses it, while the perfect teaching of the essential teaching section is unsurpassed. And I just explained why, right? Again, the other 13 chapters of the theoretical teaching, okay, chapter 1 through 14, okay, but other than the, which one? Expedient means. What was the only two significant chapters in the first 14 and the second 14 is the expedient means. What are we doing Gongyo? And the 16th, the lifespan. Okay, that's it. The other 13 are inferior to the expedient means. They're all chapters in the theoretical teaching. They're all one of the first 14 chapters, but none of them say the kind of stuff, say the correct teaching that the expedient means does. Okay, and likewise for the lifespan. That's why we talk about the the one chapter and the two halves, right? Because there's only that little space that's really focused on the latter day of the law and us, bodhisattvas of the earth. All right. Okay. So again, the other 13 chapters of the theoretical teaching have that which surpasses them, while the expedient means chapter is unsurpassed. Again, the other 13 chapters of the essential teaching have that which surpasses them, while the one chapter and two halves are unsurpassed. Again, among the teachings put forth by the great teacher Tentai, great concentration and insight is unsurpassed, while the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra and the words and phrases have that which surpasses them. Do you understand why? Okay. What was the last teaching of Tentai? Great concentration and insight. So it has nothing that surpasses it in the teachings of Tentai. Okay? Words and phrases and whatever. Words and phrases and profound meaning both came first. They're unsurpassed until great concentration and insight comes along. Then now they have things that surpass them, and great concentration and insight is unsurpassed. Now where's it going to go? It's going to all end up in Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We already know that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I'll say all of this, so this all flows together, and then there's only one more point anyhow. Again, among the teachings put forth by the great teacher Tentai, so he's already qualified. Among the teachers put forth by the great teacher Tentai. All right. Great concentration is unsurpassed, while the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra and words and phrases also by Tentai have that which surpasses them. Great concentration and insight. And now, in the minds of Nichiren and his followers, and here's the whole point, because where does this point exist in reality? Where does Nam Myoho Renge Kyo exist in reality?
All of us.
Only in our
All life.
faith.
Yes.
The faith in our life.
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. So, and now in the minds of Nichiren and his followers who have come into this lifetime with this mind, okay, what is unsurpassed is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Among all the things that are unsurpassed, it holds the highest position of all. So when we don't place the Gohonzon first in our lives, when we put all the nine world stuff first, or make it important or more important than chanting Daimoku and starting our day the way we're supposed to with the right mind of what our true identity is, we create the difficulties that we must surmount.
Yes.
Absolutely, they're of our own making.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
So if you're not getting where you want to go, how do you start your day? What's the first obligation you feel? Hopefully it's to the Gohonzon.
Yes.
Okay? And if not, we try to keep polishing that mirror until that is the first thing. Now, we may have overslept. There may be reasons why we can't. But in our heart, and we don't just walk out like it's no big deal. Do you know what I'm saying? It's all about the mind. Okay? Not necessarily the mouth yet. We're going to get to the mouth later. All right? It is, okay. It holds, among all the things that are unsurpassed, it holds the highest position of all, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Yes. It is the wonderful law that is described in the passage above as a cluster of unsurpassed jewels, a cluster of jewels that represents all of the paramitas. What are the paramitas? It represents all of the practices, okay, the belief sets, the rules, okay, the understandings of truth, all the 10,000 religious practices and the 10,000 good deeds of all the Buddhas, of all the three existences of past, present, and future is greater than everything combined. There's nothing of any of that I mentioned that don't actually have their origin in Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Everything has its origin in Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And because we have come to this unsurpassed. Now, why is he saying unsurpassed? There's nothing greater than it. Okay? Cluster of blessings. Okay? That has come to us unsought. Okay? He's now saying, because we didn't have to seek it. Okay? Right? And without labor or trouble. And without labor or trouble. Without religious practices or good deeds. This means I can go straight from being an evil person and hearing Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and go straight into the eradication of my karma. I don't have to go through a process of getting rid of the evil first. Okay? And without labor or trouble, without religious practices or good deeds, just faith can turn that on. This cluster of unsurpassed jewels can come into our possession through the single word faith. That's the whole first word of that first sentence of that paragraph. Without labor or trouble, without religious practices or good deeds, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels can come into our possession through the single word faith. That is why the passage that says it has come to us unsought, jitoku, the word ji of the phrase jitoku, come to us of itself, refers to the 10 worlds. That is, the cluster comes into the possession and each of, oh God, I'm going to start crying. The cluster comes into the possession of each and every one of the 10 worlds. This is what is known as the true aspect of all phenomena. The fact that the 9 worlds continue to function and we still keep living in them, but the 10th world is in every one of them all of the time. All the time. And all we have to do is bring it out.
Yes.
But we don't. Because we don't hurt enough yet. Okay? So when the pain comes to make it finally change, realize you're the one that created the pain. Because this all says it very clearly. If you'll just have faith in this and drop the bullshit, the hubris, the incorrect thinking, it drops off of you like dust that you brush.
Exactly.
It's not even hard.
Exactly.
Okay? So he's going to now give it the, okay. So I'm going to go again from It is the Wonderful Law. It is the wonderful law that is described in the passage above as a cluster of unsurpassed jewels, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, a cluster of jewels that represents all the paramitas, the 10,000 religious practices and 10,000 good deeds of all the Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future. We get to just snag that by chanting. And without labor or trouble, because it's as easy as starting to chant. Without religious practices or good deeds, this cluster of unsurpassed jewels can come into our possession through the single word faith. And that is why the passage says, it has come to us, jitoku, unsought. The word ji in the phrase jitoku, come to us of itself, refers to the 10 worlds. That is, the cluster comes into the possession of each and every one of the 10 worlds, from hell to Buddhahood. This is Buddhahood. We have engaged our, we're no longer Buddhas in theory. We are Buddhas in fact.
Yes.
This is what is known as the true aspect of all phenomena, being at one with the true law, with the Gohonzon, with Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Therefore, this passage is saying that Shakyamuni Buddha is, Therefore, this passage is saying that the Shakyamuni Buddha of the perfect teaching, Therefore, this passage is saying that the Shakyamuni Buddha of perfect enlightenment is none other than the flesh and blood of us living beings.
Yes.
You should ponder this very carefully. Shakyamuni is not greater than you. He's not different than you. You are Shakyamuni. Anything you read about Shakyamuni, you're just that. You're all that in a bag of chips. And the same thing goes for the Daishonin. The only thing that we can't be, that the Daishonin is first.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
That's his mercy. That's the compassion of the original teacher. You should ponder this very carefully. He says, okay, point 6, and we're done. This is a page and a half long now. 2.5 pages long. Point 6. On the great mercy of the world-honored one in the passage, the world-honored one in his great mercy makes use of a rare thing. In pity and compassion, teaching and converting, bringing benefit to us. In numberless millions of kalpas, who could ever repay him? The Daishonin says, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the world-honored one is Shakyamuni Buddha. The great mercy is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, although we're all Shakyamuni Buddha. I've just read that to you, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's the living being.
Yeah.
The great mercy is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that by which the living being realizes their true identity. If we wish to repay the great mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha, this capacity to have perceived the truth, we should accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra, which means to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law and to make all people equal to ourselves. This is the way to acknowledge the mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha. The reason the great mercy is taken to mean the daimoku, because in reality, okay, so what is the mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha in the latter day of the law? He just said it. The reason the great mercy is taken to mean the daimoku. So he's assuming you understand that the great mercy is daimoku. All right, so let me go again. Okay. Point 6, and I'm just reading from the record. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the world-honored one is Shakyamuni. Okay, so he's not gonna go in a conflict with anything trying to, okay, yes, world-honored one is Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, the great mercy is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which reveals the true identity of Shakyamuni Buddha, of all Buddhas. If we wish to repay the great mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha, because he preached the Lotus Sutra and it's gotten as far as it's gotten, we should accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra. But you can't in the latter day of the law. This is the way to acknowledge the mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha. The reason the great mercy is taken to mean daimoku is explained in the words that follow, namely, make use of a rare thing. So what he's saying here, as I go back to the Lotus Sutra, point 6, the point that he just said here. Point 6, on the great mercy of the world-honored one in the passage. The world one in his great mercy makes use of a rare thing. In pity and compassion, teaching and converting, bringing benefit to us. In numberless millions of kalpas, who could ever repay him? That I shown in saying here, the reason the great mercy is taken to mean daimoku, the reason that we believe the great mercy is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is explained in the words that follow, namely that Shakyamuni is qualified, is qualified. By the way, this is all the four disciples, Subhuti, and that's who's talking. Okay, namely makes use of a rare thing. The rare thing is the daimoku.
Yeah.
Okay, for more than 40 years. This great mercy, the Lotus Sutra. So he's qualifying the daimoku and the Lotus Sutra are the same thing, it's just dependent upon the age. Okay? This great mercy, the Lotus Sutra, because it was at the time, it was the time of the assembly and the former in the middle, was kept secret. And then in the 8 years that followed, okay, so how long did the Buddha preach? Well, how long was his preaching life? Right around 50 years, because the nirvana's in there too, right? Yeah. Okay, so for the first 40 though, what happened after the 40th year? What did he preach in the 8 years after the 40th year? The Lotus Sutra. Okay, so that's the point. Then in the 8 years that followed, the provisional Mahayana, okay, the great mercy was set forth and revealed, okay? Volume 1 of Words and Phrases, the Dharma King reveals the way people should follow, the way of the great mercy of the Lotus Sutra. Now, when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thinking in that way to save all the living beings in this country of Japan, is this not an example of the great mercy of the world-honored one? So when you're in front of the Gohonzon, chanting sincere daimoku, fusing, okay, about what you want to achieve as a bodhisattva of the earth, right? Okay, which would include what? If you're going to be a bodhisattva of the earth the last moment of your life, what would you have to have done? You would have had to continue to propagate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo throughout your life. And you would have had to be satisfied not with just yourself, but with helping others. And you would have to be concerned with not just yourself, but all living beings, right? So he's saying, the Dharma King reveals the way people should follow. The way is the great mercy of the Lotus Sutra. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thinking in that way to save all living beings in this country of Japan, is this not an example of the great mercy of the world-honored one? So when you chant for all living beings to the Gohonzon, you are expressing the great mercy of the world-honored one. You're a Buddhahood. You're a Buddha as you're sitting there with that kind of prayer. That's a Buddha prayer. When you're chanting that way, you're chanting, that's what a Buddha thinks. How can I help the world? Not what do I got to need today? Okay? All right, so he says, the great teacher Chang'an distinguishes 10 types of mercy. 10 different types of mercy bestowed by the Buddha. First is the mercy represented by a compassion that embraces all living beings. Second is the mercy of the very first sowing of the seed of Buddhahood. Third is the mercy of the various appearances of the Buddha in the interval that followed. Fourth is the mercy of concealing his virtue and appearing as though inferior. Fifth is the mercy of preaching of the lesser vehicle in Deer Park. Sixth, okay, that's Hinayana, okay, Deer Park. Sixth, and he said lesser vehicle, capital L. Sixth is the mercy of leading the disciples to spurn the lesser vehicle and long for the great vehicle. Seventh is the mercy of the rich father causing his son to manage his household affairs. Eighth is the mercy of the father awakening his son to his true relationship to his father. Ninth is the mercy of giving a wonderful feeling of peace and security. 10th is the mercy of being able to utilize what one has gained to benefit others. These 10 types of mercy correspond to the 3 analogies of the robe, the seat, and the room of the thus come. That is, the 3 rules of preaching that are set about in chapter 10, Teacher of the Law. Volume 6 of On Words and Phrases says, so Myolo adds, the seeds planted long ago are beginning to sprout a little, but they have not yet unfolded and attained the stage of flowering. So what means would they have to repay the mercy shown to them so long ago? All right. It also says, do you understand what he's talking about there? He's once again qualified the seeds were planted in Sansen Jintingo is the first place he said the seed of Buddhahood was planted. I mean, when I heard from my dad, great universal wisdom and excellence. Then he says, hey, God be telling you the truth. And these more than 40 years, I haven't told you really the truth. I didn't do it back then under the Bodhi tree. That wasn't the first time. Okay? So now what he's saying, Volume 6 of On Words and Phrases, which would be Myolo, the seeds planted long ago. In other words, these are seeds. This is something that you made the cause to be able to encounter in this lifetime, in a previous lifetime. Okay? Those seeds that you acquired so long ago are beginning to sprout a little, but they have not yet unfolded and attained the stage of flowering. So what means would they have to repay the mercy shown to them so long ago? They don't know what they are yet. It also says, the commentary says that things do not reply to heaven and earth for the fact of their existence, as a child does not give thanks to his father and mother for the fact of his birth, it is because they lack a sense of obligation to repay the debt they owe. Commenting on this, the supplement to the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, which is a dude named Tao Xin, who was a priest of the Tentai school in China. Volume 6 says, things do not reply to heaven and earth for the fact of their existence, means that although things come into being through the agency of heaven and earth, they do not attempt to repay the kindness of heaven and earth. The same applies to the case of the child. Okay? On the words and phrases. So this would be Miolo now saying this. So this was a comment from Tao Xin about the words and phrases, and now this is Miolo saying his comment. Okay. How could it be simply because they lack a sense of obligation to repay? Rather, it is that this mercy is such that it cannot be repaid. Okay? Do you understand what that all was trying to say? I've jumped around here and it's said, let me keep reading. Maybe it'll become more clear and I'll go back. Commenting on this supplement to the words and phrases, Tao Xin again says, how could it simply be they lack a sense of obligation to repay? Means that the thus come one has given the voice hearer disciples something that in principle is incapable of being repaid. What he has given them in principle is the one great nirvana. Okay? Buddhahood. He's given them access to Buddhahood in your present form. Okay? So what is he saying here? The record of the orally, he's finally going to tell us what he's really saying. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, thus, although the commentators offer various different interpretations, in the end, the great mercy refers to the sowing of the seeds of Buddhahood through Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Let me say that again. Thus, although the commentators, okay, so the commentators are talking about what? They offer various different interpretations. In the end, the great mercy that they're talking about refers to the sowing of the seeds of Buddhahood through Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Because if they're Buddhas, they got sown those seeds too. They're not oblivious to Nam Myoho Renge Kyo because they haven't been born in Japan in the 13th century. All right? Because of this mercy of sowing the seeds, because of this mercy of sowing the seeds, all other kinds of mercy follow just as shadow follows a form. And now Nichiren too dispenses this kind of mercy. In presenting this Lotus Sutra to all the living beings of the country of Japan, he is bestowing upon them the 10 kinds of mercy of Shakyamuni, is he not? And when he says, and now when Nichiren too dispenses this kind of mercy in presenting this Lotus Sutra to all the living beings of the country of Japan, what's he talking about? He is bestowing upon them the 10 kinds of mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha, is he not? Okay. Chang'an has qualified 10 kinds of mercy, right over here, that he's gotten from reading Tiantai, okay, who got it from the sutra itself. So supposedly it's Shakyamuni's teaching, right? Okay. What the Daishonin is saying here, and then we got to go through all these 10 kinds of mercy that Shakyamuni has delineated according to Chang'an, what the 10 he was able to discern from it, right? We've gotten all the way over here, and now we're talking about another guy laying more comment on it, okay? Then we go back to Miolo, he's laying more comment on it, and then the Daishonin ends up by asking you a question. Thus, although these commentators offer various different interpretations, in the end, the great mercy refers to the sowing of the seeds of Buddhahood through Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's all we do, right? We sow seeds. We sow seeds. We're Buddhism of the sowing, right? Yeah. Okay. And all those seeds are guaranteed to grow to Buddhahood. They don't have to do anything else. They just have to grow. All right? Because of this mercy of sowing the seeds, all other kinds of mercy follow just as shadows follows a form. In other words, the greatest mercy of all mercies is bestowing the great vehicle upon another. All right? If you're capable of that mercy, you're capable of all the other mercies. There are no other mercies that they just follow. Okay? And now Nichiren too dispenses this kind of mercy, the greatest of all kinds of mercy. In presenting the Lotus Sutra to all living beings of the country of Japan, he is bestowing upon them the 10 kinds of mercy of Shakyamuni Buddha, is he not? So he's saying, by bestowing Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, have I not also done the 10 kinds of mercy that Chang'an is qualifying Shakyamuni to have? Yes. As we have seen, these 10 types of mercy correspond to the 3 analogies of the robe, the seed, and the room of the thus come one from the 10th chapter, Teacher of the Law. He just said that earlier, right? The first, second, and third types correspond to the mercy of the room, that is great pity. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th types correspond to the mercy of the robe, that is gentle and forbearing. And the 8th, 9th, and 10th types correspond to the seat, that is the emptiness of all phenomena. With regard to the 6th type, the mercy of leading the disciples to spurn the lesser vehicle and long for the greater vehicle, get rid of Hinayana and go for Mahayana teachings. Volume 6 of Onwards and Phrases says, therefore, after preaching the sudden teaching, the Buddha sets forth the doctrines of the lesser vehicle. What's the sudden teaching? What was the first thing he said that was correct, but wasn't quite correct, because he could see that they weren't catching on. He's going to have to dumb it down a little bit and probably wait a while before he got to the really, really correct. Flower garland. The Flower Garland Sutra. Therefore, after preaching the sudden teaching of the Flower Garland Sutra, the Buddha sets forth the doctrines of the lesser vehicle. So why did he go from this great Mahayana teaching to like rules and regulations, 500 rules for women, 250 rules for women? It's a lesser vehicle. He says, okay, therefore, after preaching the sudden teaching, this is his mercy. He sees that they don't get it. Okay? So the Buddha sets forth the doctrines of the lesser vehicle, something that they can grab a hold of and be able to understand. And then, through the lifetime connection, purging and washing them clean, his disciples, he refines and pounds them into shape as though with hammers and mallets. He refashions them into Buddhas of the appropriate teaching, Buddhism of the latter day. Okay? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And that's the end of chapter 4. And so we'll see each other again
3 weeks.
In 3 weeks.
Right.
Thank you. I hope this was clear.
Thank you.